Hi, guys. Denise here from the TOWTalk Podcast. I'm here with my buddy Neil. We're here to talk about all things small town news, events, stuff going on here in the town of Wallkill, as well as Orange County, New York, and across the state. So we're a little late here. It was Labor Day weekend last weekend. People out doing stuff, so we took the weekend off. But I just wanted to pay tribute to Labor Day and to workers in general. On Labor Day, there were about 1,000 demonstrations across the United States with the theme Workers Over Billionaires, and including here in Orange County, Democratic candidate for county executive Michael Sussman held a rally in Goshen. I believe Neil was there. Were you there at that?
I was. I did go.
So how big was the turnout?
A few hundred people showed up. It was nice. It was a nice turnout.
That's nice.
All there to support labor. It was not, intended for one political candidate or party or the other. Anybody could show up. It's a great opportunity to get together and celebrate labor, as well as, talk about the things that labor is fighting for and some of the issues of the day.
That's great. So while we're on the subject of labor, I wanted to tell a little bit of a story, and this is an interesting story. It's the story of the Radium Girls. Who were they? These were workers who worked in radium plants. These were corporations that used radium in paint to paint clock faces. And this happened, I guess, between the turn of the 20th century through when this started was maybe in the 1920s, in the early 1920s. And let's see. So the story of the Radium Girl stands today as one of the most important battles for labor rights and protections, particularly as it pertains to women. That's why this is so important. And I'll get into that later. Just note that women throughout history have been viewed as disposable, and nothing demonstrates that more than this story. So, radium was first discovered by Marie Curie and her husband in 1898. And even back then, Marie noted that it was dangerous because she incurred radiation burns from it. So, despite the risks, radium was peddled as a magic cure-all that would cure your illnesses, extend life, make your cheeks rosy. So, the U.S. Radium Corp in New Jersey, they sold watches and clock faces that were painted with the radium-laced paint. So they would hire women, basically young girls, teens and 20s, single girls, to do the jobs because they felt that because they were women, they had more delicate hands, better attention to detail. And they were instructed to dip the brushes into the paint and then lick the brushes, pull them between their lips to bring it to a fine point so that they would have better detail. So when asked if it was safe to put the paint in their mouths, it was like, oh, it's absolutely fine. It's going to make your cheeks rosy. You'll love it. So unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So by the early 1920s, many of these girls who worked in these plants began getting sick. And one of the first cases of this was Amelia Mali Maggia. And I bring her up, and another reason to bring this up is because we are coming upon the 103rd anniversary of her death as a result of radium poisoning. That'll be on September 12th. So she worked in the U.S. Radium factory in New Jersey, and her symptoms began as a painful toothache. So she went to the dentist to have the tooth pulled. That came out, and shortly thereafter, she had to have a second tooth pulled. Eventually, she started developing what seemed to be an infection in the sockets that included painful pus and swelling. And eventually, The illness spread throughout her mouth and other parts of her body, but she had what appeared to be an abscess that ran from her jawline up to like the bottoms of her ears. All of this area in here was swollen. So she went to the dentist, and the dentist kind of put his fingers in her mouth to kind of move the jaw a little bit, and it broke off in his hand. He was able to actually pull bones out of her mouth. Shortly thereafter, the rest of the jaw came out. And 4 months later, on September 12th, 1922, she passed away at the age of 24. So at that point, a connection to radium had not been made, but other people began getting ill. And it's interesting to note that while women working in the plant were told to lick the radium brushes, men who worked with the product were actually given protective equipment. And it wasn't until a man died at the plant that there was finally an investigation done. So I should also add that they tried to claim that her illness was caused by syphilis, which doesn't explain how other women in the plant began developing the same symptoms. And despite the rising number of deaths, the CEO of US Radium kept dismissing the connection between their deaths and their jobs. So as I said, it was only after the death of a male employee in 1925 that they got a pathologist, Dr. Harrison Martland, to investigate the deaths and the radium painting operation. Martland's research proved that radium had deposited in the employees' bodies, and it was emitting radiation that would honeycomb their bones, basically make them porous. Think about osteoporosis on an extreme scale. And so it caused cancers in their bodies, but yeah, the porousness. They were actually, these women would actually glow in the dark. That's how much radium was in their bodies. So when they got the results of Dr. Martland's research, the CEO dismissed them and hired his own researchers to disprove his findings. But the publicity got so bad that the president of US Radium denounced the employees as trying to palm off their maladies on the firm, claiming that the women were just trying to get financial assistance for their medical problems. I mean, is this starting to sound familiar to anyone? Like where we are today? And part of the reason is because the radium industry was really prosperous at the time. You know, everybody wanted these glow in the dark clocks, and it was used for other things as well. So of course they didn't want to have any bad publicity. But the workers banded together to fight the injustices, and one of those notable fighters was a woman named Grace Fryer, who suffered a crushed spine due to the radium poisoning and was forced to wear a steel brace. Fryer decided to seek justice and search for a lawyer, but she was turned down by several attorneys who either didn't believe the claims or were worried about fighting a powerful corporation, or were not prepared for a legal battle which dealt with overturning existing legislation. So they didn't want to take on a challenge. Imagine that, lawyers not wanting to take on the government. All right, or a big corporation. However, by 1920,
surprised.
Yeah, exactly, right.
I mean, you know, can I just?
Oh no,
just
definitely go.
Just to point out, I mean, when it comes to lawyers, right? We all think, you know, we all watch these legal shows, and everybody has like 50 million paralegals, and you know, and they make it seem like every case has like a team of lawyers and paralegals all working for them, when in fact most of these attorneys out there today, right, you know, are in small, you know, they're in small businesses. It's either them or them and a partner, and they don't even have a paralegal. Right. You know, or they have one paralegal and they're working on like hundreds of cases. You know, the idea that you can walk into an attorney's office, you know, and get legal representation is a complete farce, you know, especially if you're a worker or you're somebody who needs help, you know. And these big companies aren't going to, I mean, they represent the corporations that are benefiting in a lot of these cases. So, you know, they all end up getting conflicted out. So it's very, very interesting. Not not to get off topic, because
No.
I think that's a good topic. It recently came out that the law firm, right? So the law firm that assisted the Trump administration with getting the 10% ownership in I think it was a chip manufacturer or whatever it was, right?
Nvidia.
Like,
I think you're thinking of Nvidia or
right,
Intel.
right. So it just happens to be that that law firm, right, that represents that company, also agreed to do pro bono work for the administration.
Right.
They made a
As
deal.
part
They
of
were one of the ones that made a deal. So, where's these companies, right? Conflict of interest, these they don't care. They really don't
no.
care. They're just too big. They're too big,
They
and
want it.
you're not going to get one of them to represent you for your case, because they're likely lobbying and campaigning on the other side to ensure that you as a worker don't get those benefits.
But I think
So
those attorneys are out there because in this case and as in other cases, but you're not going to get a big corporate multi firm. But
you
sometimes
need somebody who's hungry, who's young, who wants to make a name for themselves and has time, right? Because everything is about time. Time to do research, time to do,
collect
briefs,
evidence
collect evidence, like, I mean,
and beat the statute of limitations if there is one in place, which usually there
you
is.
work for a law firm, so you probably know better than I do all the things that go into just one legal case versus, doing something on that type of scale.
Yeah, so I just quick background. I started out working for a small sole practitioner in the city of Middletown. Would go on to one of the larger firms in this county that handles personal injury, and would eventually move on to working in corporate law, big corporate law in the city. And big difference between working for contingency fees, such as in civil cases, lawsuits, local lawsuits, car accidents, slip and falls, and that kind of thing, versus big corporate clients that are paying $1,000, $1,500 an hour. Very different. And so those are the types of law firms that you're talking about, who the president targeted and who
I mean,
settled.
right. When we a lot of people make fun of lawyers, like, they're shysters, they're this, right? Like, you hear that all the time. Lawyers are just people looking, trying to make a living just like everybody else, you know? And at the end of the day, if they take a job on contingency, well, they still have to, that means they have to wait until the end to get paid for the work that they're putting in now. Well, they still have to put food on their table, feed their kids, they still have things to, like, they have to pay for. They still have car payments, they still have house payments. Like, we don't think about those things. Like, I mean, granted, yeah, we care about ourselves and we want to make sure, but just like everybody else, you know, I don't care who you are, you still concerned about those things. You still want to make sure that you still have an ability to earn a living and take care of your family.
Exactly.
Sorry, and I think
No.
all that ties into what we're talking about when it comes to labor, about the idea you want to be able to bring home a living for your family, be safe and be healthy for them, right? So that you can enjoy your life.
And safety
I'm
in
sorry.
the workplace. But
Yeah.
that's where we're going. We're going in that direction.
Right.
She did get an attorney in 1927. His name was Raymond Barry. He sued U.S. Radium for, at that time, $250,000, which was a whole lot of money. There were 5 plaintiffs involved, including the woman I mentioned before, Grace Fryer. I think they won the 250, or they sued for 250, and they settled for 10,000 each, plus a $600 annual payment. Within 2 years, all 5 plaintiffs were deceased, which is pretty sad. But the word of the lawsuit spread, and it found its way to, it was called Radium Dial in Illinois. I think they were in Chicago or in the Chicago suburbs. And one employee, Catherine Wolf, started having meetings to try and, they wanted to get with their bosses and say, we heard about this. Is it safe here? You think it was bad with U.S. Radium? It was even worse there. So the employers, I had to make this notes. I couldn't believe it when I read it. Not only did they deny the responsibility and claim that the employees were lying and lied about the results of the studies that were being done, but these people went as far as to interfere with the employees' autopsies, stealing their radium afflicted bones in an attempt to cover up the truth of what was happening to the employees. They began fighting their case in the mid 1930s. That's how long it took to start getting people aware and start getting lawyers to want to take these cases on. And so it happened during the height of.
But are people aware, and are lawyers taking these cases on? You're hearing about. We think today that oh yeah, there are plenty of lawyers out there willing to take these cases, and that these cases, I will tell you right now, right? You hear about such a small fraction of the cases that are available and where lawyers take on the cases. Most of the cases that people have, that people would love to get their due, nothing. They get nothing. Nobody will take their case. Nobody. Again, everything is about time and money. Okay.
And what's it going to cost to invest that time and money?
Right. If you think, if you're an attorney and you see somebody was wronged in the workplace and their damages are going to max out at $50,000, and you realize, like, hey, I'm going to put all this time and effort and they're not going to get any money because I have to get paid too, then it becomes not worth it. Right? Then it becomes a cost benefit of, well, the cost is going to outweigh the benefit that you will receive. So in those type of instances, employers are getting away with what could be murder in certain instances, right? Because of the fact that there isn't enough employees and there isn't enough money to go after where lawyers would even take on those cases. So I don't like putting the idea in people's heads that there are a lot of attorneys out there and that these cases are really prominent. They're not. I mean, a lot of these cases don't even see the light of day. You never even hear about them.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened here. I mean, like, I didn't even hear about who the Radium Girls were or what the story was until Tom Morello, lead guitarist from Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave, who I absolutely love. He wrote a song about it about 3-4 years ago called Radium Girls. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Radium Girls, and it talks about, licking the paintbrushes, but shut up and be quiet and don't talk about what's happening to your bodies, about your bones crumbling.
We hear that all the time, though.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time.
Yep.
And a lot of employees are scared because they don't want to lose their job. This is their income where they help their families. It's a really, it really becomes a very tough thing where, especially now when you don't have, when OSHA's been dismantled and the National Labor Relations Board has been dismantled, there really isn't anywhere for workers or employees to turn now to get those
to get justice.
To get justice, yeah.
And that's kind of where, and that's kind of where I'm winding this up. They won their case, but in spite of the win, the production of radium watches continued until 1968. But thanks to the cases of the Radium Girls, new and improved safety standards were created to protect future dial painters and employees from working with radium as well as plutonium, by the way. And it's really notable what these cases did. In 1949, Congress passed the law which granted workers' rights to compensation for occupational illnesses and eventually led to the establishment of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, otherwise known as OSHA. And I should point
Which is
out
being dismantled today.
that there is a bill by Congressman Andy Biggs. I don't know which state he's from, but it's Andy Biggs, put a bill in back in February looking to dismantle OSHA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've already they essentially defunded it. I mean, they already moved away from, these agents. Again, everything takes money. If an agency isn't funded, then the agency can't do anything. It's been sort of like people going out there and blaming the EPA when stuff goes wrong, even though the EPA for past decade or so has been dismantled and defunded.
Exactly.
Exactly. You can't expect things to go right when you're dismantling and defunding agencies that help
and firing the people who would come
us.
in and help to protect us. And that was one of the points I wanted to bring out, because I want to make 2 points. Number one, the labor point, safety standards, we're losing those and we need them, right? You want to be healthy in your workplace. You want to be safe in your workplace. You don't want to be exposed to anything that can make you sick or injure you, or not have the proper safety equipment when handling bad stuff or climbing up a building. You want all that stuff, and that's what these agencies did for us. That's number one. And number two was the fact that the first investigation didn't even begin until a man died. The women were disposable. They didn't believe them. They were their complaints were easily dismissed. They were shunned when the second case was brought up in Illinois. It happened during the Great Depression. So they were shunned for trying to take money from their bosses through a lawsuit while they were busy dying. Their bodies were falling apart.
Aren't we seeing this today, though?
That's my point.
Women who are victims not being believed. I mean, we're seeing this today. We had a whole, there was a whole they did a press conference. There was a whole press conference of women.
And then they had jets fly over.
Right, and basically they're being told, well, we don't believe you, and we're not going to listen to your claims.
But they'll believe they'll believe the word of the co-conspirator.
The thing is they've released names. There have been names that have been flown out there. We already know some of those names, right? But it's the idea of everybody's like, oh, release. You already know. You already know who these people are. The releasing of the names does nothing unless there's going to be action associated with it. And since we know the names, and since they're not being released, there's going to be no action.
Yeah. And it's
right. And it's the same thing with the women you discussed, the Radium. It's the same thing. It's ignore it, and that's it.
Shut up, sit down, and look pretty. That's the
right.
line from the song.
We don't want to listen. We don't want to listen to you. We're not going to do anything about it. And that's the end of it.
And it's interesting because I was watching iHip News. That's the I've Had It podcast, and I was watching it just last night, and they brought up a post from Walsh. Forgot his first name. But he referred to those women as the alleged victims. Now they're not victims anymore. They're alleged victims. Like trying to just belittle them more and more for what they went through.
This is what happens all the time, right? This isn't anything that isn't new. And the problem they have is we just don't have a system set up to appropriately handle these type of situations, right? It shouldn't take for you to have to file 50 million things and have to hire an attorney on your own. And, there should be a way to say, my employer is violating, X, Y, and Z laws, right? this needs to be taken care of.
And that's
You
what the
know,
labor board did. I've had
to a
claims
certain
against
degree. To a certain degree, yes.
but at least you had,
Yeah.
as much as I could help you, you had a direction to go to, a place to get at the very least advice. I mean, I had years ago when I used to sell cars when I was really young, I had a case against my employer. He tried to stiff me. I had a demo. I used to drive a demo, and the demo was given to me with 5,000 miles on it and a dent. And when I left a couple of months later, they tried to charge me for the dent when the dent was already there when they handed me the car. And first of all, you can't even charge me for the dent. You can't take money out of your paycheck. And I had to go to the labor board, and they did come in. They contacted him, and I got my money. I got paid. They had actually taken the money out, and I got it back. So, the labor board does good things. We need it.
They do very good things when they can, and if they have the manpower, and if they're funded,
exactly.
There's a reason. There's a lot of people who went. The reason why there is so much discontent with government agencies is because they don't have enough people. They're not fully staffed. They're not funded properly. And what ends up happening is people go complain, and then they feel that the government doesn't do anything for them. They feel discontented. And that discontent then gets a voice, from a political party who gets in there and says, well, you know what? I got elected because of incompetence, right? Because things aren't going the way they are. So I can talk about that and continue to defund it, right? While claiming the incompetence, right? And make it worse, because then it just fuels what I'm talking about, right? The idea that we don't send people to fix things, right? We send people to break things even more, and that's sort of the scary part is that we've sort of reached a state where, we've made a lot of these institutions so bureaucratic, okay, that people who desperately need help can't get it.
Right.
And then when those that do get some help and are able to do it, right, then they either get persecuted or prosecuted, depending on the situation, right, because they needed the help.
Yeah. The victims get the worst of it.
It's this idea that if you're poor, it's criminal. Like, it's criminal behavior to be poor, and that's just like we believe being a billionaire is somehow altruistic, and that makes you a great guy, right? And being poor makes you somehow you're less than, and it's bullshit.
It's absolute bullshit because it's billionaires are making us poorer.
Right. It's this, being one or the other doesn't make you one thing or the other. There are good billionaires and there are crappy billionaires. There are good poor people and there are crappy poor people. Just like there are good middle class people and there are shitty middle class people. In fact, I know more shitty middle class people than anything else. Like it's like unbelievable. Like, I'm sorry. One thing or another doesn't make you good or bad. It's how we treat others.
Exactly.
and what we do and our actions.
I feel like we're losing that,
Yes.
We're losing that, and I think we need to get that back. I think we need to focus on building each other up and supporting each other. And I think we're going to need it more and more.
Well, it's I was thinking about this today because while we're talking about workers, I was thinking about some of the quote unquote, and I'm going to put them in quotes, criminal raids that occurred on some of the large manufacturing industries this past week.
Yes. I think they were upstate, right?
There were two upstate New York, and then I believe that there was one in Georgia.
And the one in Georgia.
The one in Georgia is the one that seems to have more information about it than the ones in New York. But nothing hurts labor more, okay? Not just immigrant labor, right? Like all labor, right? Than this type of brazen and malicious and I'm gonna say destructive behavior.
Yes, I
This
couldn't
is
agree
this
more.
is absolutely destructive behavior. So the facility in Georgia, right, is a battery facility that isn't even open yet, right? They are open. It's supposed to open and be operational in 2026. Anybody who's been in a large facility, especially in the manufacturing industry, knows that if you're going to open up a new facility, right, where you're going to produce something, okay, you need to send people from your existing facility to go oversee that, right? Because you need things built to spec. And only somebody who's been able to see it work, right, and knows the insides and out are going to be able to do that, right? So this South Korean company, okay, sent some of their people over here to oversee it.
Exactly.
All right? You
You
can call it immigrant labor. You can call it whatever the hell you want.
But it
right?
was temporary. They were on visas and it was temporary.
Right. It was temporary and they were on visas. So now that facility is closed, right? And now they were supposed to open in 2026. Who knows when they're going to open? What they've basically come out and said is this is a battery manufacturing facility. This battery manufacturing facility was supposed to support, right, either hybrid or other manufacturing cars here in the U.S. where they assemble the cars. So this is U.S. jobs, okay, that this was going to support. It was creating U.S. jobs and it was going to support more U.S. jobs all throughout the country, right? And now the manufacturer is basically saying, listen, we don't know when this facility is going to open. This means that we can't produce as many cars, which means that we're going to have to reduce our production in the United States. What does reduction in production mean in the United States? For those people who are not smart enough to understand that, that means layoffs. Okay?
Layoffs and less
because
jobs.
if you're producing less, okay, that means you don't need as many people working those lines or in those facilities. Okay, so that means all the way up the supply chain and down the supply chain, right, where you need parts to make the batteries and you need to assemble the vehicles, all that goes away. So you're talking about this could cost the United States thousands upon thousands of jobs, if not tens of thousands of jobs, right, moving down the line. This is just complete and utter self-destructive behavior. Okay,
it makes no sense.
From a group of people who I'm gonna flat out say it are just racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We all need each other. I'm sorry to be the one to reveal that to everybody. We all need each other. Right? Whether you're a rich billionaire or you're somebody, who's working, you're part of the working poor. Every single person, all up the chain, right, is needed. Okay?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
valued. Okay? It does, I understand people equate their value with money. Okay? But that's not the case.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not the case. We all are valued. We all benefit. We all need each other, right? The sooner that people start realizing that community is important, right? And that this isn't speaking as a socialist or as a communist or as a right wing or even a fascist, right? We all need each other. I'm sorry. That's the way business works. It's called supply chain. Okay, even from the when you manufacture something, it starts off somewhere. It starts off with whether it be steel or iron or some mineral, right? All the way material. All the way up to your finished product. Enough's enough of this crap.
And then,
okay, I've had enough of it.
You need people to buy the product, and if they're not working, guess what? They don't spend money. billionaires can't stay billionaires.
It's this, it's this idea, right? Like, oh, well, they're just going to create some type of slave labor, incarcerate the kids, and then force them into labor camps, right? Well, who's going to buy this stuff then? You're right. Like, who's buying it? If you don't have a robust middle class to support your consumer society, okay, then you have nothing, okay. Then we're back to the nobility, right? Again, now we're back to feudalism and nobility, where it's the nobility rules over, whatever it is, I don't know. That's whether
kind of the direction we're going right now.
Neo-feudalism.
Neo-feudalism. Yeah. This is an interesting note. It was a couple of weeks ago, I was watching Secular Talk. So that's Kyle Kalinske. Love him. You should definitely follow him. He discovered that today, with home ownership, let's talk about home ownership. In America, I believe the percentage of 30-year-olds in our country who own homes, people around the age of 30 who own homes, is about 33%. In China, it's 70%. While our middle class is on the decline, it's harder and harder for people to own homes. And obviously, when you're underpaid, when you have low wages and low safety standards, and you're not making the money, you can't buy a home. And the homes are that much more money to begin with. So, people live home with their parents. Well, that's because they can't afford to live anywhere else. You can't afford rent. You can't afford to buy a home. You can't afford a mobile home in a park at this point for a lot of people. But China has reinvested their wealth over the last several decades that they've been building up their economy. And now 70% of the population in the age 30 or 30-somethings can own a home, actually own their home. And that is sad. We are like turning over all of our success to China.
That all started in the 80s. With
I think
Reagan.
In the 70s. I think even in the 70s.
It actually kind of it started with Reagan Nixon opened up China, but then the outsourcing became more prominent during the Reagan era. That's who promoted outsourcing, and that's when we changed from a manufacturing economy to a service economy.
Right.
That's when the biggest shift in U.S. workforce from manufacturing to service really occurred. And now we're seeing another one, right? These changes occur all the time. The U.S. has been really good in the fact that, as I said, it's the reserve currency of the world. So, we have a pretty stable currency as a result of that. But how much longer will that last? Who knows? That's a completely different topic, though.
Yeah, that's another topic.
Right.
But so I wanted to. The point of this episode was about labor and what's happening to us, and why we still need to fight for labor rights and fight for unions. My mother was in the CSEA. My husband was a Teamster. I tried to get into a union as a legal assistant. There was a union. No, law firms don't want unions. But so
my parents were both in unions. My brother's in a union. Yeah.
Yeah. So union strong, and remember the Radium Girls, and remember that women's voices matter. You said it. You said it a couple of weeks ago. You said it when you were talking about
women.
that. Trust women.
Trust women.
Yeah.
Trust women.
I trust women. I am a woman. I trust myself. But yeah, so that's it for today, and we will see you soon. And stay well, everybody. Take care.
Peace out.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this episode, please let us know what you think in the comments. Also, if you haven't already, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can also click on that little bell so you get notified of new videos when they drop. And some good news, you can find us on popular socials, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitch, and Patreon, with more to come. Just do a search for TOWTalk Podcast or the Town of Wallkill Podcast. So thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to delivering you more content in the future. See you soon, guys.